Welcome to another episode of Rich Dad Stockcast, where we help you navigate the world of investing and financial education. I'm your host, Denney, and today we have an intriguing topic: the rise of artificial intelligence in investing strategies. Now, before we get started, remember to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. Your feedback helps us to bring you more of the content that you want to hear. And don't forget to visit stockcastbonus.com for free access to valuable educational resources to boost your financial knowledge. Joining us today is Rich Dad expert Andy Tanner. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Del, so good to be with you. I've been so excited about this season 3 and working with you. We've known each other for many, many years, and your investing acumen just brings so much. So I'm grateful to be here and share some time with you and talk about artificial intelligence. It's certainly a thing for sure, and it's going to impact investing.
It really is, and I'm so excited to learn this topic from. I've learned so much of the fundamentals, but it seems like AI is so new, and everyone's trying to figure it out. And are they excited for it? Are they scared of it? But my question for you is, how is AI or artificial intelligence, however you want to say it, how is it transforming investment strategies today?
Well, AI is certainly a new technology. I don't know that AI is what we thought it would be in science fiction, where it would be self-aware and, smarter than a human being yet. I think there's tasks it can do much faster than a human being, for sure, often less accurately. I think one of the nice things about investing is it is always, when money's at stake, people are going to use any technology they can. There's a wonderful book that I can recommend people read about it's called The Man Who Solved the Market. It's Jim Simon, and he's an MIT guy who's a mathematician. He hired a bunch of computer programmers because he really believed that by using computer models that it could be done better automated than a human. This is back when a 300 megabyte hard drive, that was as big as a refrigerator, those computers. And reading that, right now we already have high frequency trading. We already have algorithms. Most of the trades that are done that create the volume in the markets are not guys like me that are going to write a covered call here and there and just really enjoy dividends. They're active traders that are trading in milliseconds. So the use of technology isn't new, and AI will certainly push that. But there's also a ton of problems with it. And I think the way I'll frame this conversation is there is a human instinct to have all reward and no work, to have all reward and no risk, and to push buttons. I've seen this my whole career through different people who come up with different technical indicators and models to try to predict the future. And however we may try, it's certainly a long ways off to simply go to a prompt and say, give me all the stocks that will make me rich and buy them for me and monitor them for me and make me rich and walk away. That is such a fantasy. You got a better shot of finding the Garden of Eden somewhere on earth right now than you have, where there's everything's good and nothing's bad. So there's not a replacement for education. Matter of fact, the more education a person has, I've talked to some really guys on the cutting edge of AI, prompt engineering. It gets better with what you know. So we'll talk about it.
I first realized a few years ago how crazy AI was getting it. Everyone talks about AI, but a few years ago it was more of the algorithms, right? I have a show that I love to watch. I don't know if you watch this, Billions on Showtime.
I've not seen it.
It's about hedge funds and whatnot. But the reason why I bring that up is they were fighting to get this algorithm that works so that it made trades even better. Now I'm sure that, Wall Street's using algorithms, all this fun stuff. But what about yourself? Like, what are some real world examples of AI that's used today in investing?
Yeah, I think AI. If you look at, a lot of people use Chat GDP, and there's other platforms I've used as well. The disclaimer at the bottom of most Chat GDP says double check your information. ChatGPT can make mistakes. And if it's important information, double check it. And if you spend any time at all on it, you'll find that it does have inaccuracies. Even doing homework with my son and giving it a basic high school level math problem, it has struggled often with those. And so while it automates a lot of tasks, this still has to be, we still have to be the overlords over AI and double check its work. How I will use it is for getting ideas. And this is how I've done this in the past is I'll just share with you my process. Before ChatGPT, I would use scans for decades, for years. From the dawn of the information age, from the internet, really, we've had the ability to establish criteria for what we like and say, okay, go fetch and find stocks that fit that criteria, and then we double check it. So my test is really something I call the 4 pillars of investing. We have a checklist of criteria fundamentally, which is really a litmus test for company performance. Just even if it didn't have a stock price on it, how's this business doing? Just analyzing it as a business aside from a stock price. Warren Buffett owns Fruit of the Loom. It's not for sale. He owns all the shares. It's not traded. He owns Dairy Queen, Geico, Duracell. All of these companies he owns with no stock price. So if we were to analyze these companies with no regard for their price and just say, how are they doing fundamentally? There's just certain things on the financial statement we need to see, certain growth, certain moats and protection. We got to have those fundamentals. The second thing is then we can involve price with what's called technical analysis. And this is where a lot of the algorithm come in. Fundamental data comes out once a quarter. So, that's not as exciting for algorithms. They still use it, but price action and the emotions and the psychology it tries to measure is really where most of the action is. I don't do high frequency trading. I don't care to work that hard. And then after that, we position ourselves for cash flow. And this is another interesting thing that AI can do is we can say, hey, model out, if I have a certain stock, it's not really good at fetching real-time data yet. It will someday. And I'm excited for this. Where I can say, hey, model out several different ways to trade this. And that's where amateurs lose and professionals win. Is you can give me a scenario in a stock, and I might have 20 different ways to position myself for profit. I might trade a range instead of a direction. I might use some leverage with the options opportunistically. I might be on the sell side where I'm going to exploit time decay. And as you look at the different opportunities there, I think AI will really help you give ideas. I think the mistake is to think that it's automated and that it would just do the work for you. I think the best way to approach AI and the way I approach it is the way I use it in my life. I use AI to proofread things, and then I read the proofread. I don't spell well, so it usually spells better than I do. And I can have it do menial tasks, sorting things out and giving commentary and ideas and just having a conversation. But you have to understand that AI is not a human being. It exists with data that's already out there for everyone. It just gets to it faster. It doesn't have a crystal ball. It doesn't have tremendous algorithms. If you ask it what the best stocks are, it'll tell you what all the humans think. So it'll regurgitate what humans think. So while it's extremely exciting and it gives us another, look, it's like a dishwasher. The dishwasher is going to do things better than we do them, and automatically. It'll do some things automatically, but we still got to cook the meals, man. So while it's exciting, it's important to know why it's exciting and not expect more of it than it can do at this point.
I think it's important to frame that, AI and Chat GPT and all these, they're tools, right? That's all it is a tool. So can you talk about the difference between like a tool and having proper education on how to run the tool?
Absolutely. Well, and that's almost a self-evident question. I mean, the scalpel doesn't make the surgeon, does it? It just absolutely does not. And I love how you framed that as exactly what it is. It is a tool. Search is when I would use searches for stock, I might say, hey, find me a stock that trades at least 1 million shares a day, so has liquidity, and find me a stock that pays a 3% dividend or better, and find me a stock that's shortable, and find me a stock that's optional, and find me one that is experiencing higher highs and higher lows fundamentally, or maybe is in a ascending triangle, and find me stocks with a certain PE ratio and a certain peg, and I can just give it all these parameters, say go fetch, and these tools are something we're very accustomed to using, and there's always new and better ones coming out all the time. So people that have been in the space, AI is like, oh, okay, well, there's another tool. This is cool. But the ability to do prompt engineering, the briefcase doesn't make the attorney, the scalpel doesn't make the surgeon. It's the law school and the med school and the practice. It's interesting they call it a practice. That comes from what's practical. That's where the word comes from. Is there a practical application in practice when we put stuff into action? And there's just no substitute for that type of stuff. And so knowing how to use these tools, I think the first skill in AI, probably the first basic level skill, is prompt engineering, is to know how to ask it questions, how to ask it the right questions, how to communicate with it so it understands what you want. And that comes from education. Knowing the right questions to ask unlocks the power of AI. And if you just ask it what question, some people use the AI to do its own prompts. Like, give me a prompt to give you that is the best. It's a fun game to play, but I would caution people. I think you framed that beautifully. Actually, is that this is a tool, and skilled craftsmen use tools. And I can swing a hammer because I used to do that as a kid. Framing houses. My son deals, he's had more basketball in his hands than a hammer. He's not old enough yet. He'll probably get there someday, right? Everyone has a crappy job at some point in their life. But if you don't know how to swing the hammer or use the nail gun, there's an awkwardness that is the greenhorns, that they show up pretty fast, and the journeymans just get things done better and faster. Same with AI. Education unlocks its value.
Absolutely. And I think about it's funny as you say that. I think of there's a book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
read that. It's a
I've
classic.
heard of it.
It's a classic read. It's one of Elon Musk's favorite books, and they actually made a movie about it.
Yeah.
And it's about they go to this all-knowing robot and they ask a question, and they just ask the wrong question. It was like, what's the meaning of life? And it's like, come back in a year. And they come back in a year, this big like hubbub about it. And the answer is 41. And everyone's like, what do you mean 41? I don't get it. But the point of it was you have to ask the right question.
Yeah.
And that's really what AI is. How do you ask the right question?
And just, having a fundamental understanding of what investing is in the stock market, essentially, my philosophy anyway, is I think the people that do well own equities and they trade options. And the biggest reason for that is options expire. They're not a long-term investment. They are like an insurance policy. They have an expiration date. So usually the people that sell insurance do better. Obviously, buying insurance has its place. We'll talk about that in a different episode. But just understanding that it's business ownership is going to help us ask better questions. If a person understands the 4 pillars of investing, which I have stood on those pillars for my entire investing life, fundamentals, technicals, cash flow, and risk management. Those are the things that we need to know to engineer the proper prompts. And AI is not a huge part of what I do. I imagine it will be more of what we all do as it grows. And certainly I've learned that when there's improved searches and improved technology, you embrace that. Usually makes the job faster, easier. I don't know if it makes us any better. Gains in the market are pretty consistent. The growth in real estate is pretty consistent. There's a lot of things outside of AI that matter. And so in terms of learning to ask the right questions, that comes from your knowledge, right? And if you have the four pillars and a sound understanding of those four and a basic level of education on those four, which usually takes someone about, I don't know, probably 20 hours of study. If a person set aside 20 hours and said, I'm going to work an hour a day, 5 days a week, within a month, they could have a working, practical knowledge that they could apply in their life. So this is not a 4-year degree. This is not grad school. This is not 8 years of med school and a residency and internships. It's a little bit of paper trading, and it's about 20 hours to learn those things. And that's what we do. We take people by the hand, and then they'll be amazed at how they can unlock not just AI, but any technology by asking the right questions. So maybe we can talk more about that after break.
Yeah, let's after break. I want to get into what are some what investors should be aware of as they're considering tools to use and whatnot. So let's cover that right after this break.
Awesome.
So far, it's been great. I needed a source where I could really enrich my education through stocks. I didn't really have an avenue for it, and it's helped me a lot. The simplicity has really gotten me on the track to where I enjoy the learning as well as it's really solidifying in my mind. And like, they're not just trying to sell you something, they really care about the people that are in the course, and they really do care about you and your personal goals, and what you want to do is to help you and your family and whatever your goals are in life through that. So it's really been great.
All right, welcome back to this episode of Rich Dad Stockcast. Again, our topic is the rise of artificial intelligence in investment strategies. Now, before we get back to Andy, remember to like, subscribe, and leave your comments below. Your feedback helps us to bring more of the content that you want to hear. And don't forget to visit stockcastbonus.com for free access to valuable educational resources to boost your financial knowledge. All right, so let's get back to our topic. Now, we're talking about AI. And Andy, my question for you is this: what should investors be aware of when considering AI-driven investment tools?
Well, I don't know that I have all the answers to that, because AI is as new to me as anybody else, and I've had to adjust and learn it and figure out how to interact with it. I think the first thing a person needs to understand is that it makes mistakes. It is dangerous to I used to play this game with my students about YouTube. Even people watching YouTube now. There's certain things you can learn on YouTube and certain things you don't learn on YouTube. For example, if you're going to defend yourself in a murder trial, get a lawyer or go to law school. You probably don't just watch a 15-minute video on YouTube to think you're there. And so I'll repeat myself a little bit with this question, because the drive inside of a human being to get something for nothing and reward without work or reward without risk is so prevalent in today's world, more than I've ever seen it. The idea of TikToks, I've never seen anyone build a solid financial education 15 seconds at a time with that superficial idea. So I think to operate with this, learn what it is and learn its limitations, because it's wrong a lot. And I've worked with it enough now in other areas of business and just personal use that my confidence in its accuracy has diminished tremendously. You're kind of blown away at what it can do when you first start interacting. And then it doesn't take very long to set expectations that it doesn't meet. And so we've got a long ways to go. I think that's the first thing I think people need to be aware of when they interact with this technology, is that this is not a panacea, and it's got a long way to go. It's going to be wonderful, but it's unfortunately it's not a substitute for good old fashioned know-how and good old fashioned work. It just can help us do those things maybe a little bit more economically and help us that way.
Where do you see, obviously first we have to have a solid education behind us, and then we use it as a tool. Where do you see these tools going in the future for trading?
They're going to get better. They're going to get better. They're going to get a lot better. The ability to the challenge with AI is, how do you replicate a human being and then make it even better, right? And so it's, we got robots now that are starting to look a little bit more human and do things that humans can do and things that they can't do. So I'm excited for it. I think one of the things the future holds, though, is I can still, like, like Warren Buffett might have people on his team using it, but the truth of the matter is there's also certain principles and certain laws that are just unbreakable. There's just truth in the universe that's not going to change. And people think, well, if I wasn't allowed to use these searches and I wasn't allowed to use these things, everyone got to remember Warren Buffett built his fortune before computers were even around. He knew how to make decisions, and he pulls out these old books that are like this thick that are really just filled with reports and data where he would go through it himself. And now we have these processes more automated, and that's really it. The investing principles exist outside of the technology. The technology just helps us exploit these. And so I see it going in great places in the future, but I don't think a person should feel that they need to compete against it, because at the end of the day, no matter what, like, I'll give you an immutable truth. A stock goes up, a stock goes down, or a stock goes sideways. That's it. It's never going to reverse time. Time's always going to move one direction, which is forward. So when you look at concepts of delta, you have ups, down, and sideways, and that will always be so. Gravity will always be gravity. It's just not going to change. And so where it's going to go in the future is awesome. It's going to continue to make it easier. It's going to we'll have to invest less time perhaps to do it, but the principles are going to be there. I remember people used to have a really weird concept, and I guess I never bought into this because I just knew it wasn't true at the beginning. It's like, Andy, how can you compete with these computers on Wall Street? Jim Simons has got a company that they brag that they do like 15 terabytes a day they generate in data mining and stuff, or some crazy number, whatever it is. What do I care? At the end of the day, it still goes up, down, and sideways. I'm not competing against him. These guys that do the high frequency trading, that trade every single second, well, that's fine. Let them do that. It's a different game than I play. Look, if I own Coca-Cola and they sell a whole bunch of drinks and they make a whole bunch of money and they pay me a dividend, I'm happy. And if their stock price, if they have a good business, I'm going to be happy. So AI might help me identify businesses, but I can tell Coca-Cola is a solid company without AI. I don't need it to do that. So the idea that a person is going to compete against other investors, and if they don't use AI, they're all of a sudden going to get destroyed, that's simply not true. Good companies are good companies. It's just how it is.
What about regulation as we move into the future with AI? What's your thoughts on that?
Huge. It has to be regulated. I'm more concerned. The thing that concerns me about AI more than anything else is the power of the programmers, man. Those guys are going to rule the world. As I argue with AI, I see that it is infused with a lot of rhetorical context, not just veridical. In other words, AI cares about outcome. They programmed it not to offend people, for example. They programmed it to be rhetorical, where it says, what will be the likely outcome if I respond this way as opposed to telling the truth? So you'll find, if you spend any time with AI, that it actually prioritizes outcome. It has a rhetorical context. As much as data is today, much more rhetorical than veridical. And I've argued, and I've been concerned about that, and I've argued with AI enough about that I know it's absolutely rhetorical context for sure. And so the people that want to program AI, they get to design those algorithms, and those guys are going to freaking rule the world. Those guys, the power that they wield is frightening. And so with power, I'm a capitalist. I believe in markets and competition and all this good stuff. The problem with believing in capitalism is, Alan Greenspan went through this, is we tend to think we'll police each other, and we tend to be more optimistic about the bad apples, that they can't spoil the bunch. They can. And without regulation, I mean, I believe in less regulation, not more generally, but I don't believe in zero regulation, because I know there's people. Look, I'll give you a good example. You're going to have to fight every day to fight off people that call you. There's people, we always say, smash the like button and leave a comment. I feel bad. I read those comments and I see phishing in every channel every day. If you're going through our comments and someone's trying to drum up business, that's a phishing expedition. They're going to get your data and they're going to steal your identity, and they're going to, oh, but I thought it was this innocent. I mean, they're clever. And so there needs to be regulation, but more importantly, people need to be savvy. We've got to shed credulity. We've got to think veridically and skeptically, for sure. AI and the regulation's one thing, but our ability to see what's real and what isn't, and understand fake news, the discernment that our children will have to gain, the skill of discovering truth amidst all the misinformation, is huge, because as information technology improves, so does misinformation technology. Its ability to disseminate, the ability of AI to produce counterfeit. I did an AI with my voice just for fun, and I recorded it. I typed out a message, and then I had the AI speak in my voice. I recorded it, and I sent it to my mother, and she didn't know her own son. She didn't know that it wasn't me. This was a computer-generated voice. It wasn't me. So those concerns of what is true and what is counterfeit, the discernment that we'll have to gain, hopefully regulation can help that. But using AI to trade stocks, there will be as much misinformation as information, just as there is in social media, just as there is, on news channels. That's probably the scariest thing of AI, is the spread of misinformation, because it's rhetorical, not veridical, and it's been programmed to be rhetorical. The people that are programming it are thinking about outcome. They're thinking about outcomes. And whenever you're trying to push an outcome, you're going to push the truth aside. It's just how human nature is.
How do you gain that discernment? How do you gain that ability to know what's fact, what's fiction, what's propaganda, how do you develop that muscle, that skill set?
I think true principles have helped me a lot. When something seems too good to be true, it usually is. The idea of dethroning work and dethroning knowledge, the ideas of something for nothing. When you gain a certain savvy that way, the ability to read a financial statement, to look beyond. I mean, you have to do it anyway. Kenny McElroy has a great saying, the bigger the brochure, the worse the deal is. Because if the deal's good, you just show a few numbers, the deal's good, right? It's audited, it's good. The more flowery it gets, so there's a certain experience and savvy, and you're going to have to make your mistakes. But if you understand true principles, my kids, I worried about them growing up with CGI, because I remember going and watching Jurassic Park in the 90s, like, that's a real dinosaur, man. And now my kids are almost fed up with the movies and the Marvels and the CGI, because it's so easy to make grandiose explosions and realistic things and special effects. And the other day, my son and I, he had never seen The Shawshank Redemption. And we just watched that movie with no special effects to speak of. And he's like, what great storytelling that was. That was an amazing experience. And they're starting to gain discernment based on context. When they see something that they haven't, seen with their own two eyes outside of a computer screen, and it doesn't jive, on the computer screen. When you see, these deep fakes of guys like Steve Kerr or guys in the NBA, they're just saying outlandish things. You just become skeptical, and I think that's a healthy skepticism, to look at context and look at what's happening when we see it with our own two eyes and what we see on a screen. Spend a lot of time in the real world talking to real people, and then compare that to what you see on the screen. So I think that's how it's done, and I'm not going to be perfect at it. I'm sure I'll be taken in at some point, but those true principles, what we call, Robert was one of my great teachers, and he said, look, there's just generalized principles that don't change and that are true in all cases. And if you see something that's violating those true principles, you don't want to be dogmatic, of course, but there's a difference between dogmatism and true principles. And when you can discern that, I think you're going to be okay. But that's my biggest concern with AI, is that it will be programmed rhetorically to push agenda, as opposed to it's like college. You can go to college to get educated or indoctrinated. One is veritas. The other is rhetorical, right? Pushing an agenda and outcome. It's persuasive rather than instructional. So that's the challenge with AI for sure.
I love that. I'm gonna have to rewatch that part there because I just blew my mind. And we're getting towards the end of this, and I want to ask just one final question. Can you share any final thoughts on the future of AI and the investment world that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I don't know. This has been a great conversation. One of the reasons I love teaching is it forces me to figure out what I think I might know and change when I find out that I'm wrong. I think that the one thing I would talk about with AI is how do you capitalize on it, right? How do I capitalize on it? And a lot of people capitalized on the iPhone by writing apps for the iPhone, right? They didn't invent the iPhone, but they piggyback by writing apps. And I will tell you that I love things like Bitcoin and AI, but I make money on them a little bit differently than people think. For example, I own a company called Apple. AI is going to make that company more rich. I own an electric company. AI doesn't exist without technology. So I own that utility. So if you want to use AI, you got to buy electricity from me. If you want to use AI, you have to buy a phone from me. I own a company called AT&T and Verizon Wireless, both of those. And I love the dividend on Verizon. I love the options. I like Verizon a little bit more than AT&T right now. But I got to tell you, if you want to use AI, you got to use my network. And so it isn't just about investing in NVIDIA, even though that's a great one as well. That one might have a even more upside. It's going to overtake and be one of the biggest companies in the world if it hasn't already hit it. So one thing we haven't talked about is, you don't need to use AI if you own it. And then no matter how it's used, you're going to make money off it. So I love owning things that are the foundation, the bedrock of technology, because as AI and as technology continues to dominate our lives and be more and more of a necessity as opposed to a luxury. I remember when people had a cell phone, it was kind of a luxury. I remember when I was in my 20s that a friend of mine got a cell phone, and I was trying to decide whether or not my business was big enough to justify that expense yet, if I'd really made it. I remember that in my 20s. And now, my kids have had a phone since they were how old? And so as these things, people talk about food, clothing, shelter, the necessities. Homeless people have a cell phone. Everyone has one. So if you want to capitalize on AI, start investing in technology. Technology, I'm very bullish on it. It's volatile. It'll have pullbacks. There'll be winners and losers. There's risk there. But, once you wind up and you have the FANG trade settled, there'll be a FANG trade for AI. There will be. There'll be some dude that come up with him and his dad will work on something in their basement. And they'll be the next billion-dollar company. And there'll be others that are all flash in the pan talking about the serial entrepreneur that started it and how much money they've raised instead of how much money they've made. And same thing. It's 1990s all over again. But there will be a cream that rises to the top. There'll be the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google trade. There'll be the FANG trade, the Apple trade. And a lot of these, I think this time around, it's going to be some of the existing companies that really rock it just because they have so much power. They're going to be ahead of the game. So I think that's the one thing we haven't talked about is you talk about leveraging AI by a user. I even like the idea better of, like, I don't know how to build an iPhone. And so I'm not going to try to build one. And I might not know how to program ChatGPT, but I can own that company and benefit from it in a huge way. So if a person is worried about AI taking over their job, I'm a truck driver, we're going to have self-driving trucks. Great. Buy the company that's going to replace you, and then you're the boss and you own it anyway. So the idea of buying and replacing your income as an owner of a technology rather than trying to compete with it as a user or as in the workforce, I love the idea of owning it instead of trying to compete with these smart people. Just own the thing. Like, I don't have to compete with Steve Jobs. He's way smarter than he was way smarter than me. But think about this beautiful word, share. He'll share it with me. These are called shares. It's such a beautiful idea. I will share my company with you if you'll share some of your money with me. It's no different than when we went to lunch and I had a ding dong and you had a Twinkie, and I got, let's share. I'll give you a little Twinkie, you give me a little ding dong, and there we go, or whatever. I got a peanut butter and honey sandwich, you got a turkey and salami. Well, let's just trade for a little bit. Let's just share. And the idea that these large companies will share with you and I technologies that they could have kept to themselves, that they look for our help to grow and to fund and get bigger. It's an unspeakable opportunity. I could never program AI or build a cell phone in my garage, and yet I get to own this. The opportunity is huge. So get educated. That's always the message here at the Rich Dad Stockcast. Get educated, be smart, leave your comments, but don't go after anyone who's out there just slumming around, drumming up business, going to fish you. Just be savvy and be smart and focus on your education, not something for nothing. It's always the message.
Amen to that. And I love that last part, thinking bigger, by the company that's running the AI. I think that's huge. And I'll leave with a quote. It's by 50 Cent, the rapper. He said that, I know this is a random one, but it makes a good point.
Dell's quoting 50 Cent. I'm love it, man.
50 Cent here. And he's a smart business guy. He's written a few books, but he said, most rappers are trying to go to the mall to buy some Gucci. I'm trying to buy the mall that the Gucci's in. Just saying.
There
Be
you
bigger.
Go.
Think bigger.
It's absolutely true.
All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of Rich Dad Stockcast. We hope you found our discussion on the rise of artificial intelligence in investment strategies insightful. And a big thank you to Andy Tanner for sharing his expertise with us. Now, remember, whether you're just starting to save or nearing retirement, the key is to stay informed and educated. And speaking of education, don't forget to visit stockcastbonus.com for free resources that can help you on your financial journey. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you like, subscribe, and leave us a comment. Your feedback helps us to bring more of the content that you want to hear. So share this podcast with your friends, your family members, to help them to make better financial decisions too. Thanks for tuning in to Rich Dad Stockcast. Until next time, stay smart, stay invested, and take control of your financial future. I'm Denney, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Del.
This podcast is a presentation of Rich Dad Media Network.